Did you ever stop to think about the compromises I made? It wasn't easy for me, you know. I took your name, though New Labour never sat easily with me. Waving plastic union flags was not really my thing either. And then when you said you wanted us to do it the third way, I was shocked. I was embarrassed. I felt used, Tony. I leafleted for you. I canvassed for you. And now you are over there in America with Rupert, and here I am, right back where I was in the mid-1980s, Labour in opposition, and another pile of undelivered leaflets in my hallway. When New Labour came to power, I was in my mid-30s, married with 2 small children in a semi-detached house in the London borough of Lambeth. Once described as loony lefty, but now reformed and sensible, Lambeth and I were a good fit. I had grudgingly accepted the changes Tony Blair had made to the Labour Party, after so many political defeats and my growing realisation that we were not going to get the Tories out simply by suggesting it loudly on marches. I didn't wear left-wing badges anymore. I had transferred them to the lapels of the full-size Maggie Thatcher spitting image puppet I'd inherited from my time on the show, and which now stared at me from beside my desk. This grotesque latex model traumatised my poor little daughter every time I forgot to close my office door. I tried to put it into some sort of context for her, explaining who Mrs. Thatcher was and what she'd done as a politician. But still my daughter woke in the night crying from her nightmares about Maggie. "What exactly are you frightened of, darling?" "I'm scared that she's going to take all the milk from the little children." When my son was 4, I'd overheard him playing with his plastic dinosaurs. "And then the T-Wex smashed it all up and then joined the Labour Party." My poor kids never stood a chance. We were a Labour family. Our front door was red, our cereal selection was Nestlé-free, and our new kitchen extension made it perfect for the Labour Party committee rooms on election day. Even my shoes were a bit left-wing, according to one posh writer I knew. How can my shoes have political attributes, I thought. That's ridiculous. And then I looked from my plain Doc Martens across to his expensive tan brogues and thought, ugh, I could never wear Tory shoes like those. My parents were both Labour supporters, and a casual observer might have said that when it came to the issues, my dad was more left-wing than my mum. Rather refreshingly, he moved to the left as he got older. When I was a student, we had argued over his support for the Falklands conflict, but 20 years later, father and son bonded over our mutual opposition to the coming war in Iraq. My mum wasn't in the pub for this conversation. She was writing letters to foreign dictators for Amnesty International, or she was securing the lease for the Oxfam shop in King Street, or she was shaking a tin by Cookham Station for causes she believed in. So, who was the most left-wing out of any of us? Tony Blair may have been the most right-wing Labour leader I could remember, but he alone was going to effect change, which also made him the most left-wing leader I could remember. Power, that's the central purpose of political parties, and ours had generally been second best at winning it. Rediscovering that VHS of Election 97 was like watching the climactic last episode of a very long box set in which all the many villains are finally brought down one by one in lingering and imaginative detail. We watched this tape as a family at a time when Britain had just voted to leave Europe, when politics had turned particularly nasty, while Labour were rock bottom in the polls, drifting and divided and looking like they might disappear altogether. I tried to explain to my kids what a Labour landslide felt like, our incredulity at the scale of our win, when we had not dared to presume we would ever see a Labour victory in the rest of our lifetime. Picture a whole evening's television with little red bars constantly flashing across the bottom. Labour gain Hove, Labour gain Stroud, Labour gain another implausibly posh place in the south. The Tories lost more seats than they retained. Can you even imagine how happy that made us feel? After so many agonising defeats, after that mirage of victory in 1992 had evaporated at the very moment we reached out to embrace it, after being knocked down all through the 80s and 90s, at long last, it was we who were standing on chairs cheering and the Tories who were utterly defeated and dejected. There is Battersea turning red, the place where I had become consumed by the local Labour Party when I had first moved there, aged 22. I had spent 1st of May 1997 back in my old stamping ground. I delivered Vote Today leaflets, I sat on a polling station collecting voters' numbers and giving a very clipped and unsmiling good morning when the Tory MP...